This is a long-planned heist. A security company named Foro is transporting a cash-filled armored vehicle when suddenly a cement truck blocks the road. The robbers use an excavator to lift the armored vehicle to prevent it from driving off, cut open the doors, and deploy stun grenades to subdue the security personnel. However, they failed to notice a boy in a nearby car witnessing the entire robbery. When the robbers realize this, they order the boy out of the car. Confused and trembling, he tries to call his father, but his dad is already on the phone. Overcome with fear, the boy can only comply with the robbers' demands to lie down on the ground. As the robbers are moving the money bags, a security officer suddenly attacks, pulling off a robber's mask. The robber shoots him dead to conceal their identities. The robbers kill the other security staff, including the boy. The boy's father, Patrick Hill, witnessing his son's murder, furiously charges at the robbers but is shot down before losing consciousness. He fixates on the scarred face of the shooter, memorizing it. He doesn't die, however. After 3 months of treatment, he finally leaves the hospital and applies for a job at the robbed security company. The manager, Terry, mentions the truck incident, noting that 2 guards and a civilian are killed, a tragedy. They still haven't found the scum who did it. He informs Patrick Hill that he will be replacing them, but first he needs to pass some firearm tests. He is trained all day by Bullet, barely meeting the threshold to become a guard. Once approved, they nickname Patrick H later. He meets other guards, including Hollow Bob and Boy Sweat Dave. Their first drop-off begins with H, and as expected, the day goes smoothly, everything proceeding according to plan. The next day, H and Dave go out to work. Suddenly, armed robbers using radios force them to stop, having caught them in their sights. They order H to throw the money bags into the back of a pickup truck. He says, "Throw the money in the flatbed," but he deliberately drops one from the truck. "Sorry, pal," he says as one of the gunmen approaches. H throws a bag but quickly shoots the man in the head. He continues firing at all the gunmen with 100% accuracy, killing each one before pursuing the leader. He chases the leader through nearby buildings, cornering him and blowing his head off. H's actions at work are scrutinized by Terry, who tells him that he will be working on a desk for at least a month. However, Foro CEO Blake Halls praises him, suggesting he deserves a promotion. "What you did deserves credit. You are a real hero," Blake says. H is then called in to review video footage of the previous truck robbery to see if the gunmen in the recent robbery look familiar. He stares at a particular robber but tells others that nothing seems familiar. Then, these 2 agents are proven to be working for an agent named King, who believes H will lead him and his men to the perpetrator of the first robbery. Other guards applaud H's heroic actions. He thanks them and then starts working as usual until 3 months pass. Bullet and H are en route when a bicycle blocks their way, and they are surrounded by gunmen. "Get down!" A smoke device is deployed, forcing Bullet to come out of the truck. However, when H steps out and shows his face, the gunmen seem to recognize him and immediately retreat back to their headquarters. Terry can't understand why the armed men leave the money just by seeing H's face. So, let me get this straight. They just walked away? But Blake silences Terry, telling H that he will now have his own team and continue doing what he is doing. Bullet talks with Boy Sweat Dave, calling H a dark soul. Later that night, H enters the home of a guard named Dana. But when he finds a stack of money in her apartment, he interrogates her. He fires several shots to scare her, and she reveals that she has stolen some money from a job months ago. H shows her 2 photos of her parents, warning her of the severe consequences if she lies to him. The scene goes back to 5 months ago. H is with his son Dogie, who was on vacation in the United States. H receives a call from his former criminal boss, Mike, who is also the leader of the game from which H had escaped. Mike seeks H's help for one last job, but he doesn't need to be directly involved, and T here is no danger to it at all. "You can stand back 1,000 yards, Mike says. H and Dogie drive near the docks where the robbery is about to happen, simply telling Mike in which direction the truck is headed. As H is buying food for himself and Dogie, tragedy strikes. He witnesses his son's death. H is comatose for nearly 3 months before recovering, only to be told that Dogie had died. He meets with his ex-wife, Jane, who blames H for their son's death. Later, he meets with Mike and his associates, all responsible for what happened to Dogie, and agrees to help. "I need to know who pulled the trigger. I want a name," he says. The organization interrogates the criminal underworld from one team to another until a man is questioned and gives up some names of criminal brothers. H is taken to a building where the brothers are involved in all sorts of heinous crimes. They have no information. H eliminates the brothers. He notices the guard working there, which is why he has his assistant Kirsty fetch him some documents. These are background checks on the guards and the autopsy report of Dougie's death. We meet the perpetrators of the first robbery, a team of former Afghan veterans seen as dirt in America, led by a man named Jackson. His men include Carlos, Sam, Tom, Brad, and finally, Jan, who killed Dogie and shot H. They are seen planning the truck heist at a party hosted for Jackson. The crew starts the robbery, noticing H and Dogie have stopped during the process. Sam orders Dogie out of the car to lie on the ground. Jan jumps the railing and shoots 2 guards. When he realizes Dogie has seen his face, he shoots him dead, then shoots H. After that robbery, the crew is planning their next and final heist. A sum exceeding $150 million is to be split among them and their inside man, revealed to be Bullet. Jackson and Tom review the plan weeks in advance. They are all worried about Jan, knowing his actions have deviated from the plan, but Jackson believes he will ultimately follow orders. The crew heads to Foro, where Bullet confesses to H that he is the mole who has informed the crew which trucks to hit. "They will kill you if you don't comply," he says. He disables the cameras and enters an abandoned building. Jackson's crew, clad in heavy bulletproof vests, enters the truck after tying H's hands. The robbery commences without a hitch. "Don't you make a sound," a robber yells. Everyone lies face down, hands on the ground, but a guard panics and hits the emergency button. It turns into a spectacle. Bullets fly as they blast the door of their hideout. They begin executing everyone in sight, and halfway through, one of their own gets injured. When they turn off the emergency button, they open the gate, letting the last man bring in their pickup truck to start loading cash. Meanwhile, the SWAT team has been alerted. They are on their way 8 minutes out. As the police manage to blockade the entrance and SWAT arrives, H manages to grab an attacker's gun, shooting him in the leg. Then he puts him in a chokehold until the man stops moving. He smartly wears bulletproof gear. He walks up to a man loading cash into the truck. He makes him take off his helmet, and when it's not his son's killer, he pulls the trigger. Jackson's other team members are immobilized, pinned down by Dana and another guard, wasting time. Bullet reveals himself when he runs over to Dana to help them. "Give me a gun," he yells, but when handed a gun, he executes both of them in the corridor. Dave tries to stand as Terry is forced out, getting shot. A suddenly appears, engaging in a fierce one-on-one fight. He is wounded but ultimately manages to kill the attacker. Jackson's men pick up the injured man, heading towards the vehicle as H starts shooting at him. Dave tries to stand up and is shot. When Terry is forced to come out as H hears a click behind him, a bullet strikes him, making him think he is dead. He reloads, calls Dave, saying the gunmen have left. As Dave pops his head out, he receives a full clip into him as they drive off. H carefully watches Jan, recognizing him as the murderer of Dogie. As they stare at each other, they open the gate, ramming the armored car into 2 police cars. Then they are pursued by SWAT and even helicopters. After sustaining minor damage from the weapons, they enter a building, blocking the entrance behind them. 5 minutes to escape, a robber yells. They plan to go through an underground passage tunnel unknown to the public. Jackson, injured from H getting a good shot that scraped his neck, is finished off by John. When they have to abandon the truck, Jan and Bullet take the money down via elevator. They load the bags onto quad bikes, drive 3 miles, and arrive in front of a car. When Bullet realizes Jan is a traitor, he tries to kill. After a while, Jan sits in an apartment holding all the cash. Then a phone rings inside his bag. Suddenly, H appears behind him, tossing him Dogie's autopsy report. Jan looks at it confused. He begins reading about the gunshot wounds to Dogie's liver, lungs, spleen, and heart. Jan looks at Doug's photo, remembering H staring at him on the floor. Then H continues by shooting Jan in the liver. After a scream, he turns to the lungs. Jan remembers H's son lying on the floor looking at him. H continues to the spleen and finally to the heart. He leaves the apartment, meeting with Agent Kim, assuring him that the job is done and he can probably recover the stolen money afterward. H gets into a car with another man and drives away.